everybody, it's Dave the Red Pill Coach, and I'm back again for another week to teach you guys how to make your life better, how to make your relationships better, and how to have a better life. That's right. We're working on that. We're going through Gottman. We're red pilling John Gottman and Julie Gottman, and we are coming up with a plan that actually works. So to review, so far in this series we have covered myself. I've talked about my credentials, my many graduate degrees. I've talked about how coaching works and precisely what coaching is, what the coach approach is, why it's so appealing to me, because you're helping other men discover what they want, not telling them what you believe. We talked about flooding, which is to say the notion that your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system get all stirred up when you're upset. Specifically, your sympathetic nervous system gets stirred up and you are not able to think clearly. So it's important to be able to identify flooding and then to be able to control it. We talked about the four horsemen of the divorce apocalypse, which is to say criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And we talked about a way to use one of those horsemen, stonewalling, in order to better your position in the marriage. Again, you don't want to overdo it, you don't want to underdo it, you want to do it right in the Goldilocks zone. And finally, last week we talked about soft and hard startups. So this week I plan to talk about something very much related to startups, specifically the concept of bids for attention. Bids for attention. Bids for attention. What is a bid for attention? Well, it's any time you attempt, or your wife attempts, to make an emotional connection. That's all it is. It is an attempt by you or by her to make an emotional connection. You will recall that startups are used when you're introducing a controversial or painful topic. Bids for attention are used all the time. It's non-stop. Couples shoot these back and forth to one another constantly. The way you deal with a startup is to use I words. Use I language. I would like this. I would like us to do this, rather than you words of accusation. See, the idea is you don't want to trigger defensiveness, you certainly don't want to trigger stonewalling, and you don't want to be critical or contemptuous. So a bid for attention can be as simple as, how was your day? You have then, as the spouse receiving a bid for attention, you have three things you can do in order to respond to that bid for attention. There's three things, only three ways you can respond. The first is ignore. That is to say, you could stonewall. She might be whining about XYZ, you don't want to hear it, so you stonewall. That's one possibility. Gottman calls this turning away. The better alternative in most cases for a happy marriage is to turn towards. And that is when you accept your partner's bid for attention, you respond with attention, and you respond by revealing something about yourself. And we'll cover that a little bit more detail in a moment. Because you can also respond with hostility to a bid for attention. Hostility. So you can turn towards, you can turn away, or you can turn against and respond with hostility. So how does this look in everyday interaction? Couples who turn towards about 82% of the time have successful marriages. Couples who turn away or only turn towards 14% of the time. I think it's 19%. 19% for men and 14% for women. Women who turn towards just 14% of the time are getting divorced. Men who turn towards just 19% of the time are going to get divorced. That's the facts, that's what the numbers show. So of course, Gottman's gynocentric solution always is to work on turning towards make sure you turn towards more often and turn away less often. And it makes sense that would make a lot of sense to do it that way. But Gottman's wrong. Once again, because he's taking the gynocentric perspective. He's not considering reality, he's considering what women have told them they want. And I assure you, what women say they want is different than what they actually want. Because if you're a man and you're constantly turning towards, continually turning towards, and your wife is continually turning away, guess what? You're chasing her. That's unattractive. Yes, that is unattractive, and you're going to drive her away further if you follow Gottman's advice and continue turning towards. So let's introduce red pill into this, shall we? How does it look to turn away and turn towards in a red pill context? Well, in red pill, we turn towards the 16 commandments of Poon more often than not because it contains truth. Specifically, number 4. And I will read it to you because it's critically important. The fifth commandment of Poon reads as follows. Adhere to the golden ratio. Give your woman 2/3 of everything she gives you. For every 3 calls or texts, give her 2 back. 3 declarations of love earn 2 in return. 3 gifts, 2 nights out. Give her 2 displays of affection and stop until she is answered with 3 more. When she speaks, you reply with fewer words. When she emotes, emote 2/3 or 1/3 less. The idea behind the golden ratio is twofold. It establishes your greater value by making her chase you, and it demonstrates that you have the self-restraint to avoid getting swept up in her personal drama. Refraining from reciprocating everything she does for you in equal measure instills in her the proper attitude of belief in your higher status. In her deepest loins, it is what she truly wants. So we're not going to find what she wants by asking her. We're going to find what she wants by watching what she does. And I find it interesting that Gottman finds that couples who respond to 82% of their bids for affection do the best. Why do they do the best? Because if a man is giving a woman 80% response on the bids to 100% of her bids, that's roughly the golden ratio there, fellas. That's exactly right. And it works, except you have to calibrate it. If the woman is not giving you bids for attention, she's not giving you affection, she's not giving you sex, then you should not be giving her what she wants. That's the reality. The 2/3 ratio is a law. You ignore it at your peril. You see, Gottman does not provide us guidance. He says 100%, 0%. So he's comparing unsuccessful couples, and it can be unsuccessful because the wife's a bitch, the wife's a withholding, frigid harpy, or it could be the guy's a jackass. But of course, Gottman assumes it's the guy who's the jackass, and we should always increase our bids for attention. Response. We should always increase our positive responses to bids for attention. I'm telling you guys, that's dead wrong. It's wrong if you are giving her more bids for attention, if you are accepting more of her bids for attention, you are doing it wrong, and chances are you are in a dead bedroom. How did I know? Because I am the red pill coach, and I understand how women work, and I'm telling you how they work. You must give her 2/3 of what she gives you. If you give her more than 2/3, she will disrespect you. If you give her less than 2/3, it will be what Gottman says, and it will start to trail off. And I hope you realize that this is not a set number. This depends on you. It depends on observation, analysis, and thought in order to make this work. And being able to think on the fly and reading your wife. That's what it takes. So what do these bids for attention look like? Well, let me give you an example. Try to imagine you're at the company softball game and you hit the winning home run. Everybody picks you up on their shoulders, they cheer, they carry you off the field, you won the game. So you come home and you say, hey, sweetheart, you're not going to believe what just happened. I just won the game. And she responds, that's nice. No, really, you don't understand. This is a big deal. I'm really excited about this. Yeah, I'm sure you are. Okay. Those are examples of turning away. You're literally pushing the person away, not interested in the emotional connection, not interested in listening to you. Sounds pretty cruel, doesn't it? Well, let's take another example. What happens when your wife comes home and she is all excited about her friend's divorce drama? I don't know. Maybe her friend's got a boyfriend and she's banging him now, and the soon-to-be ex-husband walked in on him. You know, this is good gossip, good stuff. And you respond, oh, that's nice. And she says, no, you don't understand. This is really important. They've been married for so long. Yeah, whatever. That is turning away. This is a woman, a wife, who's trying to make a bid for connection. She's trying to make an emotional connection with her husband, and he's pushing her away. Doesn't work, folks. You need to respond to 2/3 of the bids for attention that she responds to for you. Because if you push her away too much, you end up in that group that Gottman says is destined for divorce. And I hope you can see how this is very bad for a marriage. Let me tell you what's even worse for a marriage. Turning away is bad, but turning against, which women, I think, specialize in, is extraordinarily painful and poisonous to a relationship. So, for example, you come home excited about the ball game, and instead of saying, that's nice, and being dismissive, your wife says, yeah, you always had time to play with your friends, but you never XYZ, right? That is turning against. When you do that, it's poisonous to a relationship, and guys, men do it too. Men are like that too. Your wife comes home talking about her divorce drama, and you say, oh, well, that's stupid. You always talk about your friend's divorce. What do you want? To divorce me? Well, hopefully you realize that's defensive, that is butthurt, and that's not going to get you what you want. It's not responding to her bid for connection with attention and affection and an emotionally reciprocal response. So what's the solution to all this? As always, or almost always, the answer is mindfulness. Be aware when your wife makes a bid for connection. Be present. Respond to it favorably. Show interest. And do this again in the 2/3 ratio that we talked about. In order to do that, you have to be aware of your wife's bids for attention as well. And I think we should cover that before we wrap this up, because bids for attention can be verbal, they can be nonverbal, they can be 1,000 different things that require you to be emotionally aware. So observe tone of voice. Observe body language. Observe eye contact. Finally, observe how she speaks and what the content of her words are. If she's trying to make a bid for connection and she does it 3 times in a row and you blow her off, you're making a mistake. If she does it a couple times in a row and then you offer her a couple bids, you respond to a couple bids and she responds to a couple of your bids, then you're doing it right. And you will find that this is very rapid. This happens within a fairly short period of time. And this is one of the things that we're talking about, folks. This is one of the things we're talking about with respect to being emotionally connected. Women always say, oh, I can't have sex unless I have an emotional connection. This is what they mean. They mean that you are responding favorably 2/3 of the time to her for every bid that she responds to for you. You respond 2/3 for her, and women are happy. You drop below that line and women become unhappy because they feel they don't have an emotional connection. So give her that emotional connection. I've said before, spend 30 minutes a day talking to your wife. Spend time listening to your wife. Spend time reacting to your wife in a non-judgmental, fun, upbeat, happy way. And do it consistent with the golden ratio. So I'd like to read a section of one of Gottman's books. This is from the book, The Relationship Cure, 5 Steps to a Better Marriage. And what Gottman found out is, first of all, that it doesn't even matter whether couples agree or disagree. The important thing is how they pay attention to each other. That's the important thing. How they pay attention to each other. It doesn't matter what they're talking about. They can be arguing, they can be fighting, they can be yelling and screaming at each other. That's better than ignoring. That's better than ignoring. So, of course, Gottman, he watched couples, and they took videotapes of couples interacting, and then they scored them, and then it's called coding them. They coded them, and this is what they found. It says, the wife reads a funny tidbit from a magazine to her husband. Will he look up and smile? Or will he ignore her? Or will he snap at her to be quiet? The husband points to an ad in the paper for stereo equipment. Will she acknowledge interest? Will she look past it to the ad for women's shoes and make it about her? Yes, she will. Or will she frown in disapproval? The wife tells her husband he put too much dressing on the salad she just made. Will he wink playfully and say, well, you made the salad too small? That's a pretty good joke. Or will he sulk in silence and stamp his feet like a little girl? Will he tell her it was a lousy salad anyway? You can see, these are the choices that people make. Turn towards, turn away, or turn against. The topic of conversation hardly matters in these couples. And what matters is the willingness to connect. If she seems determined to ignore their spouse, no matter how riveting or mundane the example at hand. For example, we watched one wife over a period of time completely ignore her husband as he tried to tell her about the harrowing military coup he was a part of in Spain. In contrast, another couple seemed utterly entranced at one another's description of how their mothers made bread. So you see, it doesn't matter what the topic is. It matters that you're taking an interest in what your spouse cares about. It was clear that these were definitive moments in the couple's marriages. By choosing to turn toward, turn away, or turn against each other's bids for connection, no matter how ordinary or small, they established a foundation that was highly accurate in determining the success or failure of their relationships. That is Bids for Attention. I hope it's helpful. I hope you become more mindful of when your wife is trying to get your attention and when you are trying to get your wife's attention. And that you follow the golden rule, the golden ratio. Give her 2/3 of what she gives you, and you are going to do just fine. Again, if you give her less than 2/3 of what she gives you, give her more. Pay attention more, respond to her bids more often. If you give her more than the 2/3, especially if you're in a dead bedroom situation, you've got a harpy, snippy wife who's bitchy and won't put out, give her less connection. Pull back, let her chase you a little bit more, and then we'll work on it and see if we can make it better over time. But it starts with mindfulness, it starts with awareness, so that's what I'm asking you to start there. We're about halfway through all of the Gottman materials that I've been studying for the last year. We're about halfway through. So I'm going to be having different topics periodically. I wanted to cover the stuff on fighting all in one unit without breaking it up, but I'm going to be breaking up things. I'm going to be doing some interviews and giving you some of my own personal political views. I'm what you call a red pill right radical. So you can disagree with me or you can not agree with me, I don't really care. But I'm hoping that some of these videos that I produce will be fun, they'll be informative, and although some of them won't be designed to help your marriage like the Gottman series, I hope you will enjoy them nevertheless. So until next week, we're going to be talking about a couple different Gottman topics, and then we're going to be moving on to some other fun things. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys next week. Cheerio!
I can't do this all on my own. No, I know I'm no Superman.